Today we find ourselves in the chapel of the Jesuit residence at the University of Detroit Mercy in Detroit. The U of D was founded in 1877 and moved to its present site in 1922. That year, Marie Lansing and Minette Riley donated $150,000, which today would amount to $2.5 million for the Jesuit residence at the new university. Since that time, this residence has been called Lansing Riley in honor of its benefactresses. Early documents refer to it as the faculty residence, 2 floors of rooms, a main floor for dining room, offices, meeting rooms, and then an enclosed courtyard and cloisters, and then, of course, this chapel. The reference to faculty residence probably referred to the reality that most of the faculty at the time were Jesuits. Please notice these fired tiles. They were fired at the Fayence Tile Company in Flint, Michigan, about an hour or so north of here. Fayence, F-A-I-E-N-C-E, is a type of fired tile here shown in the Belgian style. Of course, human beings have been firing tile for many, many centuries and many millennia. This particular form of tile comes from Belgian artistry. So the Fayence Tile Company was established, oddly enough, to respond to an inefficiency in the creation of spark plugs. In 1908, Albert Champion created the Champion Ignatian Company to produce spark plugs for the motorcycles he liked to race. At that time, William Durant was founding General Motors and needed spark plugs for his cars. So he contracted with Champion, and the company AC Spark Plugs was born. Champion faced a problem of efficiency, however. The kilns had to be heated to over 1,000 degrees to fire the ceramic parts of spark plugs. When the kilns cooled overnight, the first batch of spark plugs each morning was of poor quality. By firing the tiles at night, the kiln stayed sufficiently hot through the night so that the first batch of spark plugs were of usable quality. Psalm 8. What are we human beings that you are attentive to us? You have created us a little lower than the angels and crowned us with glory and honor. This university is what humans can do with God's help. After the riots of 1968, the Jesuits stayed here rather than moving to the suburbs. And in the 1990s, the Society of Jesus and the Sisters of Mercy combined their institutions to create the University of Detroit Mercy. A Jesuit here told me yesterday that this university always seems to be running a deficit, and yet by year end, they end up in financial health. This surely is a sign of God's blessing. So at this university, we find God blessing us in the midst of a city that has faced significant trouble. A recent Wall Street Journal survey tried to use new criteria to rank U.S. universities. These new criteria included the ability of the university to offer social mobility to its students, especially students from low-income families, such that their alums had a yet greater opportunity to rise in social and economic life. According to that ranking, Georgetown University was 12th, Boston College 45th, and the University of Detroit Mercy right behind them at 52nd. I might add that the University of Michigan ranked 28th. God created us a little lower than the angels to do great works in partnership with God. This reality manifests itself in a variety of ways. The cathedrals of Europe still stand. And when Notre Dame was largely completed in 1260, the Hagia Sophia in Constantinople was already 500 years old. The great works of human hands can pass away. Lansing Riley may someday be an office building or a classroom building when no Jesuits are here to live. And what then will become of this chapel? Other human creations with less than glorious purpose die in ignominy. The shopping malls of an earlier era that were the center of social and commercial life a generation ago now stand in rack and ruin, broken up by weeds, standing water, and human damage. Finally, human creations that divided and debased us and destroyed our institutions of government and news have been enriched by their creators, and they too will fail. We've read recent news reports of the retirement of Rupert Murdoch. He made a fortune off misleading, false, and inflammatory programming. He has left the power to decide on the future of his companies to his 4 children. One is more conservative, one more progressive, and 2 are undeclared. On his death, they will need to make decisions about the companies. We've seen all this before. The antagonisms, the fights in court, the fortunes spent on lawyers, and all for nothing. Sic transit gloria mundi, so passes the glory of the world. Our lives are in God's hands. We all have choices to make for personal glory, for God's glory, for the benefit of humanity. Someday, then, we too will go to God. What we will leave behind is our legacy, a legacy that is ours, a legacy that may be remembered as ours, or may exist in the benefit that we have produced in someone else's life, for good or for bad, as the case may be. The good may be our contribution to visible monuments such as this chapel, with its fired tiles and its named benefactors, or our contributions to human life may be felt and remembered in other people's lives, remembered as their achievements, their blessings, not necessarily related to us in their own minds. We do not know what happens after physical death, despite the elaborate descriptions in Catholic theology. But as God is just and merciful, it seems plausible that we carry ourselves as we are at the moment of our death into the next life. Our self may be our ultimate creation, made beautiful by God as we have allowed God in, or made ugly by our own self-seeking and greed. Let's allow this chapel, this Jesuit residence, this university, to inspire us today to yet greater service, yet greater love for God, yet greater love for our neighbors. AMDG, for the greater glory of God.